You're listening to the Truck Talk with Trivista podcast, brought to you by Trivista Companies, the ultimate source for all things trucking, and sponsored by Louisville Masonry and Stone in Louisville, Kentucky, where beauty and function meet. I'm Anita Massey, Director of Marketing for Trivista Companies. Thanks for joining us. So today our topic is telematics, and we're being joined by Danny O'Halloran, who is Trivista's Telematics Expert, and John Shireman, who is President of Trivista's Indiana and Kentucky regions and a partner with Trivista. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yep, happy to have you guys. You're absolutely welcome. So Danny, why don't we just get started and have you give our listeners a general overview of what telematics is, how it works, why folks need it, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Happy to talk about this. So I've been in this space now for 9 months and I've learned quite a lot. So that first question, what is telematics? Technically, it's the combination of telecommunications and informatics, but I like to break that down a little more simple. It's the intersection of GPS location and onboard diagnostics of vehicles. So where the vehicle is at right now and what's going on under the hood. This is a revolutionary way of looking at vehicle management in that we now have a device that can pair where the truck is at with all of the diagnostic information that's being generated under the hood to allow ourselves to make some data-driven decisions. And what that means is we're taking information and empowering those people in our groups like the fleet managers at Trivista to make these decisions with regard to what to do around a truck event and be more confident in that process. And so there's a wide array of different use cases for telematics that I'm excited to kind of talk through here. And broadly, those telematics are facilitated by companies known as telematics service providers, or TSPs. And here at Trivista, we're aligned with Geotab as a reseller. And as well, we worked with Centrix and using the third-party OEM software through Navistar of On-Command Connection, International 360, and Intelligent Fleet Care.
Okay. Well, that's quite a lot. Sounds like it's definitely something that's going to be beneficial for our customers. So I'm glad that we're going to have such a broad, expansive topic to talk about today. Why don't you start? Maybe let's have John kind of talk to the audience about how he got involved with telematics.
Sure, absolutely. So, going back to 2015 is when I first got involved with it. And this is actually when International was in the infancy stages of their telematics solution called On-Command Connection, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But basically, we had very little training on it. But my sales manager and myself went to see really the biggest fleet in our territory. We're just doing a cold call. And we brought up this actual solution, On-Command Connection, and how we can monitor the health of their fleet with this telematics solution. So they were aware of telematics, but only from like a GPS and a dispatching type arena, right? They didn't know that you could actually look up these digital trouble codes in real time, and they perked up like you wouldn't believe. There were no other OEMs or manufacturers that had come in and talked to them about this. So we all of a sudden had to become the experts on it. So at that time, again, 7 years ago, Navistar had just put together, I believe it was like their connected vehicle team, they called it. So we did a demo with this fleet. Within about a week or two, we got a truck order, and really the rest is history. Since 2015, we have sold this fleet over 100 trucks. All of them are equipped with On-Command Connection, again, International's telematics solution, and it's just worked out very well for us.
Wow. That's a pretty big number for one customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. How about you, Danny? How'd you get involved with telematics? What made you get interested in it?
Sure. So I started with Trivista in the marketing department. And after a few months, I was kind of looking to see how I could apply some of my technology background as well as interest in research and policy. Because what's interesting is telematics came about by way of legislation for most people, or in another way to say it, because there was a mandate around using things for managing the electronic logging devices inside of trucks. And so all of that I knew about tertiarily. I knew that we had a department and this is something that we were working on. And so after working with our previous manager of that space, I now have a really robust understanding of what's going on in this industry and how we can leverage telematics as a value add to a lot of our customers, especially those that are in a silo, if you will, of our business. If that's just in lease and rental, if that's just in new and used trucks, if that's just in service, we're finding that by introducing this suite of tools and solutions that can be enabled through telematics, customers are finding a lot of ways to save time and money.
That's very interesting. So in this space, who would you consider some of the big players? I know you've mentioned Geotab, but who are some of the other big players that offer this technology?
Absolutely. So in the space, there are a few major legacy players. Think Trimble and Omnitrax, who have been working since the late 1970s and the late 1980s, starting to think about this type of solution. Again, telematics is just where that truck is at and what's going on under the hood. That all used to be satellite based. But with this MAP 21 legislation that brought about the ELD mandate, the 5 years before that fully came into effect, between 2017 and 2019, a lot of players entered the space. So now there are many other companies that are gaining traction and customer base, and that includes Zonar, PeopleNet, Samsara, Keep Truckin', on and on. The list is growing for players in this space.
Okay, so you mentioned on-command connection earlier. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about on-command connection and what it does? What's its role? What are some of the features that it offers our customers?
Absolutely. So on-command connection is a remote diagnostics platform that leverages an existing telematics connection.
Now, is this a dashboard that we're seeing here?
So what I've pulled up here, I'm just looking here at the on-command connection page from the International Trucks website. And so broadly, what you're going to be seeing here is a way to leverage remote diagnostics. So when you're working with a telematics provider today, we'll use Geotab for this example, you're able to get access to a lot of the rich information. If we're talking specifically with regard to the engine, that ECM or engine control module, that is serving up notice of multiple different faults. And a fault is just an indicator that something has happened outside of the predefined rules that are set for that engine, or conditions have been met that are outside of normal operation. And so we want to let that vehicle know that this is happening. And after a certain number of faults gather up, an engine light will come on. And that right there is where most people interact with diagnostics. But what on-command connection can do is take the data that's being gathered remotely and help sift, sort, and filter through it to figure out where you should, as a fleet manager, prioritize across your fleet the sickest to the healthiest vehicles, if you will. Finding ways to, again, make those data-driven decisions. And so on-command connection, now we're going to take a look here at this dashboard. What it's doing is taking a grouping of vehicles, looking at all of the information coming in, and normalizing that and filtering it down to just 4 categories. So the fleet manager now just has to think about 4 categories, and that'll help them segment the fleet and make decisions throughout the day.
What are those 4 main categories, Danny?
Absolutely. So what we're looking at is 4 color-coded categories. Green meaning no actionable faults. That means your vehicle is ready to go. Yellow meaning service soon. This is something that should be addressed at or looked at with regard to the next PM. Then moving to service immediately. This is something that may impact the ultimate operational safety and or quality of that vehicle. And therefore, we want to try to take a look at that within probably a week. And finally, stop now. Those are vehicles that are indicating some manner of a derate condition, etc. That would mean we need to pull that truck over, talk to that driver, and figure out what the next steps are. So by taking this large pool of faults and sifting it down into these 4 categories, fleet managers are able to quickly jump into those vehicles that need the most attention.
Okay.
And if I could just expand on that, that is such a great feature of this dashboard, because when, again, International first rolled this out, it wasn't that enhanced. So they didn't have those categories for the severity.
Oh.
So fleet owners and the dispatch people, they were just actually getting codes coming in, and it was so difficult to filter the severity of those. That helps out tremendously. And Danny does a very nice job when he does a training of explaining, look, it may say service now, but we can give you some guidance on what that means. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to get it in now. There can be some, time frames you can work with that.
Okay.
Absolutely. So those are kind of general ways to think about the categories. And it doesn't stop at the categories, though. If we jump into a specific unit, we'll find that actually we can get a lot more information. So I like to think about it like a filter that's getting more and more specific as we move on. And so now we're looking at a specific vehicle. We're able to see a nice grasp of main details that lets you know that, all right, I'm looking at the right vehicle that I'm trying to get some information on. And then scrolling down below, you get to see a breadcrumb trail of where that vehicle's been, as well as on the left-hand side, what faults we're dealing with. And not just the SPN and FMI of that fault for our service-minded listeners, but more so in that plain English, so that even a non-service expert or service-oriented person can understand broadly what might be going on with that truck and whether and to what extent they want to continue to drill down and investigate. So this is just providing that contextual information.
Okay, so I have a question. Does that mean that just the driver is seeing these fault codes, or does the fleet owner also see them at the same time? Where does that information live?
Great question. So the driver in a lot of this equation, we're only going to interact with that driver as we should when we have something actionable to work through with them. And by that I mean, we will, through this system, be served up a list of specific questions to ask that driver if we've gotten to that point in the triage where we know, okay, I need to get some of that personal context. I want to know what the driver sees, what they feel, what they hear. And by taking all of that information in, the system can then help make that critical decision. So the driver, actually, in this on-command connection experience, there's not a lot of overlap for where they're going to be seeing this platform as it stands today. This really lives in that administrative side, from the fleet managers to the administrative staff inside of dealerships and companies. There are often power users, that we like to call them, that really at a different company or group, depends who I'm talking to and the size of the company, but they'll really jump in and grasp the platform and start to play around and find the ways that you can get a lot of value out of it. When I introduce this platform, I don't go farther than the first 2 dashboards, and we work on a process of getting further and further in familiarity and also utilization, because it's easy to get overwhelmed at times, kind of like you alluded to earlier with, this is really nice that we don't have to just get all these email notifications, but rather we're getting a more targeted approach. That's the kind of vein that we want to try to roll this sort of software out with, because it's the best way for people to understand, engage, and ingest the new workflow.
Right. And after hearing you explain, each of you guys explain this a little bit, I'm getting the impression that telematics is definitely helping with increasing safety and diagnosing breakdowns or potential breakdowns more easily. So trucks are able to get service when they need to. Is there anything you can kind of share, maybe John, with that? Are you, from our dealership's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, not having exact stats, but I can tell you, if your telematics solution is monitored correctly, there's no doubt it's going to enhance safety. So a fleet manager in real time can see if that operator is engaging in some, call it, risky driving habits. So if there's harsh braking that's taking place, if there's over acceleration, if there's severe down speeding, which can occur like if someone is going down a steep grade and they're not shifting correctly or something of that nature, those behaviors are, they're monitored. the fleet manager can see that in real time. He can talk to the driver about that, or at least coach them on those driving habits when they come back in. So, from a safety perspective, it can definitely enhance that. And you think about, some of the claims that trucking companies are subjected to and how horrible accidents can be. That's very, very important. And from the health monitoring and knowing the codes, really with fleets today, uptime is just the utmost importance. And you hear all the manufacturers talk about that. But really, if you can see in real time some of those codes that come up that are going to cause that truck to go down and you can mitigate that, makes a gigantic difference.
Yeah. Danny, anything you want to add to that? Because that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was a great way to put it, that you're essentially you're getting more context for what's going on with your vehicle. And let's face it, every fleet manager, you hit that point where you're not going to be able to check in or on every truck every day if you were doing it by means of going and seeing it physically or calling that driver and coordinating some sort of thorough discussion. If you can access information on the fly about vehicles that's already being generated, that saves so much time. And now when we're talking about the safety aspect, that contextual information around harsh events, that's nothing but a fantastic set of talking points for a conversation about how we should operate our assets with our drivers. It's not necessarily, and some perceptions at times can come about that, well, this is extensive monitoring or things like that, but really what we're doing is we're putting the playing field level. Everybody's on the same page. We all are seeing the same data now, and we're here to have a conversation about how best can we move our goods from point A to point B. How best can we serve that customer? And again, like John, you said there, uptime is the utmost focus, and that it cannot be understated. We're in a very unique time within the industry with regard to access to equipment as well as parts. And so that means anything that we can do, any investment that a company can make in driving uptime, like a telematics system and complementary remote diagnostic tools, you're setting yourself up for success in this uncertain times. And you'll find that with that investment, working with someone like Trivista, we can show you how to get more value from that existing investment time and again.
And you mentioned earlier those 4 categories, but I think earlier we've talked about this platform can give a driver 5 different types of communications. Can you kind of talk about those 5 communications, what those are?
So I think the communications piece that I was referring to might have been with regard to the International 360 platform and how international. Yeah, so that's the service communication back and forth, and I'm sure in a future discussion we should definitely get into what we can do from a service communication side, because Navistar has created a suite of tools that allow for intercommunication so that information is being shared and there's less rework being done with regard to data entry and things like that. But generally, I like to think about or talk about this platform as being mostly in the hands of those fleet managers, those company owners, and those service-minded individuals, and we can leverage that to know best how to interact with drivers. But drivers don't need to interact with the platform itself.
Okay, that makes sense. So does that mean then that OCC tracks a truck's repair history? I mean, I know we can see in real time the faults that are happening as they're driving, but what about, let's say they get a code and it says it needs service, and then they bring the truck in. Is our technicians going to be able to not just see what they did recently, but also that history on that truck to help them better diagnose and fix?
Right. I'm going to explain this in very elementary terms. So,
right
Danny, you're
ahead.
going to have to jump in and make me sound a lot smarter here. But yeah, I mean, the sophistication of the on-command connection system is just, it's fantastic. So basically, this system is pinging that truck very, very often. And Danny can elaborate on that in a second. But basically, whenever that truck is pinged, that creates an event, and you can click on that and you can monitor the health of that unit at that time. And there's a we keep that information is kept. So if there are any fault codes that are being logged, you can go back and you can look at the history and see, okay, is this happened just once or twice in the past, or is this something that's happening on a frequent basis, and we really need to get into it and see what's going on? So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it, and I think it's best in plain English. I can get technical at times, but definitely that that access to history is very paramount within the platform. When you're opening what's called a health report, you're able to see a history of every time that the system generated a scan of that vehicle, as well as access to warranty history, if there's been warranty work that's been done in the recent past on that vehicle. And there's multiple areas wherein you can link to and get even more specific around a specific fault that needs a specific fix, and that fix needs these parts. Well, we're going to tell you, based on the vehicle that we know we're looking at, here's fitting those parts to that VIN, and also an ability to look in a geographic area and see which dealerships nearby have those parts available. And that is what I like to call maybe the peak or the paramount level of experience for a user on command connection. If you're able to work the workflow all the way through to enabling and starting that process at the location where that truck's going to be routed for repair, that is that's the workflow working at its best. And you'll have a variety of levels of utilization depending on the customer and how much time you have to engage with the platform. But the best part is that even with it running in the background for all intents and purposes, you'll find some value, and it allows for automated notification, for example, of events. You don't have to have the dashboard up. You can get told when to go look.
Right. And just real quick, this is not just conceptual. All of the Trivista regions are going to have examples of where we've been able to utilize that information, determine what the repair is, determine if we have the part on the shelf, and schedule the truck in and get it fixed. Wow. And I mean, it's not always that easy, but there are many examples where that's happened. So it's a great solution.
Yeah, efficiency to the utmost, it sounds like. So, John, do all the other OEMs offer these same services, or is this something that's really unique to Navistar and then Trivista?
Sure. So all the OEMs have some type of telematics solution. What makes International's really quite different is we have an open architecture. So with on-command connection, the open architecture basically states that you can put this solution on any truck. So if we go in and we see a fleet, we can sell them a group of Internationals, and obviously we can have it on there. But if they have Freightliners, if they have Volvos, Peterbilts, whatever other manufacturer they have, we can put on-command connection on those units as well, and we can have access to those dashboards that Danny was showing earlier. That really surprises our conquest customers and even our retention customers that have other manufacturers that they run.
So that's very amazing that we have that ability to incorporate to those other brands. Do other brands have that same technology that we have so that they could incorporate on ours, or is it strictly just something that Navistar provides?
Something that just Navistar provides.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
Absolutely. Yeah. The make agnostic nature of on-command connection is, especially for customers who may run disparate systems, or like John alluded to, the average fleet that is a mixed fleet. It might be the first time that you're able to see all your vehicles on the same map. And what that means, it really comes down to just the profound realizations around data visualization. And again, I'll say it time and again, the data-driven decision making. It's a game changer in that sense alone for a lot of these companies we work with.
Real-time data making decisions. That's what I'm really getting out of this, is you can literally see what's happening with your truck in real time and make those very important decisions in real time.
Absolutely. And think about what that means to the driver also. I mean, if you look at trucking companies, unfortunately, the turnover rate within those companies is very high. Some of the highest just in the industry in general. So if you can tell an operator that, look, your safety And in us being able to maximize, your earning potential is of the utmost importance, and we can help you do that through telematics. That's a huge game changer as well.
Absolutely. So I don't know, is it appropriate to ask, can anybody talk about what maybe a typical cost would be for this platform? How is that structured? Danny, can you talk about that?
Sure. So with regard to telematics, so I like to just point out that on-command connection in itself, it bridges an existing telematics connection. Now, if you have an international truck that's been made in the recent years, likely it's got a code that means there's a universal cable box that'll allow for communication with the on-command connection platform. But when we're talking about your telematics connection, there's a wide variability depending on who you're working with. Again, to that Geotab versus Samsara versus OmniTrax, it's a wide variability in terms of pricing for what you'll pay, and it's generally in a model of dollars per VIN per month. You can, for things like getting the engine diagnostics as well as all of the regulatory pieces covered by your TSP paired with the power of on-command connection, this is still less than $50, $40 a month to get the full range of solutions for your vehicles. And that comes with then the Trivista support, as well as leveraging a lot of those resources that, as a close partner of an OEM like Navistar, as well as if we're working with you on the Geotab side, being a Geotab reseller, we can really offer a unique both cost savings, but also experience compared to other providers of telematics solutions.
It seems pretty reasonable to me. So are there any additional costs, as far as installing hardware or anything like that, or is it just kind of all rolled into the platform cost as a whole?
So again, if we're talking just broadly on TSPs, it's going to be variable. Some telematics providers will operate on a month-to-month basis. And if you're operating month-to-month, you'll likely pay for that hardware up front. But if you're signing a contract for a 2-3 year period, a lot of times they'll fold that hardware into that monthly rate. And so we have a wide array of ways we can work with customers depending on your fleet size, use cases, needs, etc. And we work as well with the growth of a company. We can help expand once you have more bandwidth. If you have a new person that's going to take hold of managing telematics or remote fleet management, we're really poised here to help enable that success.
So, John, what type of feedback are you getting from our customers, as they engage with this platform?
It's been extremely positive. Again, among all the Trivista regions, all of our service departments, all of our dealers could talk about specific examples to where we ensured that a customer's truck stayed on the road or gave them the peace of mind that they could bring that truck back in, not have to stop it immediately. So being able to illustrate that to our customer base has been fantastic. And I think the feedback is it's gone up probably tenfold with the addition of this dude right here, Danny. Danny's not only incredibly well-versed in telematics and a total expert on it, but he has a way of developing a training program, whether it's for a customer with 5 trucks or 500 trucks. Mm-hmm. And he's able to tailor that training to where it resonates with them and, can really in layman terms show how this is going to be a great solution for them. He helps with the registrations and things of that nature. So really appreciate having him involved with Trivista. It's been fantastic. So, but just in general, it's something that fleets, if they are not participating in some type of solution right now, they really need to consider it. And like we've said, Trivista can definitely help out with that.
Well, guys, we're nearing the end of our time today. Is there anything else either of you would like to add before we sign off? I mean, I know we're going to have, this is going to be a series, I think. So there's going to be more to cover, but is there anything else you'd like to say today, Danny, on OCC?
Sure. So first of all, thanks again for the time. I'd love to come back and continue the conversation. If there's anything I've found in telematics, it's that education is one of the core tenets in terms of being able to fully understand that value. I can make I can make a much more effective value proposition if I'm also educating you along the way. And so we're excited to work with whomever. John alluded to it, fleet size of 5 to 500. I'll probably find the best way that'll allow for you and your team to engage with the product, because ultimately what we want is your teams to enjoy the tools they're using to do the job they do every day. And that's where we're at in terms of working with the existing tool set, but also being at the forefront of and on the teams that are optimizing, advancing, and making those suggestions to enhance the tool and the user experience. So reach out if you're interested in a trial of either telematics alone, which would be like Geotab, or checking out the remote diagnostics platform. We can work out many different ways to get some vehicles going. And again, looking forward to the next conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you both for this great discussion on telematics. And Danny, if someone did want to reach out to you, would you want to give your contact information for us today?
Absolutely. You can reach me at dohalloran@trivistacompanies.com. And we will soon have an area on our trivistacompanies.com website with a few ways to schedule a meeting with me, as well as learn more about what we're doing for telematics.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Danny, for your time today. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right. See you next time. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Truck Talk with Trivista podcast. You can find more podcast talks or general information about Trivista Companies and its many dealerships at trivistacompanies.com. Until next time, be safe out there.